I told you several times before that in the behavioral approach, we want to get bigger empirical realism by using insights from psychology, but we want to combine that with economic modeling so that we also have formal models, firm prediction, things like that. Today, in this meeting, it's going to happen more than in any of the other meetings, because in this meeting, I'm going to introduce prospect theory to you. Prospect theory was introduced by the psychologist Kahneman and Tversky, and of course, psychological realism was their cup of tea. They could do that, but they were exceptional because they could also speak the language of economists. They could also develop models with firm predictions, mathematics, and fitting together with psychological empirical reality. That was, of course, what made them exceptional. And I hope that when you study the formula, especially of prospect theory, for this what is presented today, that you will recognize in everything done in that formula and every component in the formula that it is based on psychological insight, that is connected with realistic processes going on in human beings. This way, so I have the ambition with this course that when you're done with it, you will be good in applying behavioral theories and in particular prospect theory, but also you've seen the inside of the machine, so you understand it better, you feed it better, and I think your application will be better because of it. But to explain to you the further novelty of prospect theory, I'm going to start now presenting a choice situation to you. Square, imagine you can go down, that's a sure gain, or you can go up, that's a risky gain. Now I'm asking you, make up your mind what you prefer. What do you think is best for you here, going up or down? Make up your mind, pause the video, and then come back. So I assume you made up your mind. Well, most people in this choice situation, they prefer going down. They prefer the sure gain. I indicated using bars in the figure. Bars means that you don't want to go there. That's how I indicate. This was the left choice situation. Also present a right choice situation to you and ask you again, what would you do if? And now the choice situation here is quite the same as the choice situation we saw to the left, only all the money amounts have been multiplied by -1. So now you deal with losses. And then my question is, what would you prefer? What do you think is better for you? Take the sure loss or take the risky loss? And maybe you will say, you know what, I don't want to play that game. Please skip me for this one. But assume that that's not available. Assume you have to choose. You have to go up or down, so you have to face a risky loss or a sure loss, and that's your choice. So make up your mind and then come back what you think is best for you. Okay, I assume you made up your mind. Well, the majority preference I indicated again is going up. The bar means where people don't go. Most people rather have a risky loss than the sure loss. Now, that finding in itself is already remarkable because it is in fact risk-seeking, because the sure loss is the expected value of the lottery. So people rather have a risky lottery than its expected value. So risk-seeking they have here. Now, this is not just one weird claim, but many good experiments, real incentives, everything have shown that this is indeed majority preference. Not only here, in many choices like this with losses involved in particular, it happens. This in itself already signals that we should deviate from classical approaches, because classical approach, and maybe in your microeconomics textbook when you learn, you were taught that people are predominantly risk averse. Well, there are many situations in which risk seeking is prevailing. This is one of them, but there are too many to ignore it. So this is already one reason why we want to deviate from classical approaches, bring in more empirical realism, but more of that is to come. And for that more to come, I present to you a middle choice situation. Now imagine you are like the right choice situation. You have to choose sure loss or risky loss. But now imagine that 1 minute before I asked you, you checked out your smartphone and you saw, I got €100 extra on my bank account, maybe a return from tax or something, but you just saw I'm €100 richer. Okay, and then you will ask the question, what do you think is better for you, the sure loss or the risky loss? So just imagine yourself in this situation, then make up your mind what you would choose there, and then come back to me. Okay, I assume you made up your mind. I want to discuss these things a bit more. I'm doing it, in fact, from a normative perspective now. I'm asking you, what would you do? So what are best, wisest decision? What is best for you? That's what I was always asking you. So if we do it from a normative perspective, rational decision making. Now, I'm gonna have some tough questions. We have the most vivid discussions with people, and that's a majority of people who, in the left and the right choice situation, have the choices as indicated. So, especially for those people, I now have questions, and tough questions maybe. But first, I wanna imagine somebody who, in this situation, did the same as in the right situation, so preferred the risky loss to the sure loss. Now, to those people, I have a question, and I'm comparing now the middle situation not with the right, but with the left situation. And I do a bit of calculation. Then I say, wait a minute, this €100 extra from, let me add the plus here. This money amount, if I add it to these money amounts, if I look at the lower branch, minus 50 plus 100 is plus 50. The lower branches in the right and in the left and middle situation give exactly the same thing, but the upper bracket also. Because if I add 100 to these amounts, I get here 0, here 100. This is a 50-50 lottery of 100 or 0. That's identical to that lottery. So I claim that the middle choice situation is identical to the left choice situation. The lower option brings you in exactly the same situation for both, and the upper option also. And I think because it's just the best choice situation, the same choice, what is best for you in one should also be best in the other. So if you prefer to go down in the left situation but up in the right, sorry, in the middle, then I really don't understand. I think, come on, it's the same. How can you choose differently? So that's already, and I think there is a condition saying that these choices should be the same, and I would call it monetary calculus. If you just know how to add up money amounts, you see that it's the same situation. You must choose the same in both situations. So I think those of you, and there are many, who they have the choices here as indicated, but here they rather go up. I don't understand. I think this cannot be justified rationally, and it would be nice if we could discuss and you could mention a reason, but I think you cannot mention a reason. The former term that these should be the same choices is called reference independence, but let's ignore that for now. Later you will understand the term. Now let's just call it monetary calculus. So then maybe you think, oh, maybe it's better not to go up here, but to go down, to have the choice here, the same as in a left choice situation. And there are also many people who have that preference in this situation. But I think those people also can be asked a tough question, because when I compare the middle situation, and I'm assuming here the majority choice, so I'm now assuming people, they prefer here to go down and here to go up, those people. And then I think I also find it strange. I can also think of reasons why the middle situation and the right situation should give the same choice. In fact, there is a preference condition that has been discussed in this course that says so. So now I invite you to try to remember what the preference condition is, pause the video, and come back to me after you made up your mind. Okay, I assume you made up your mind to the extent you want to, but there is a preference condition. It was in the first meeting, and it was called additivity. And additivity says if the money amounts are moderate, and I assume that all these money amounts are moderate for every one of you, then if you receive a little side payment that doesn't change your way of life, then what is best for you in some choice situation should not be affected by it. So the additivity condition says that the middle and the right situation should give the same choice, and it says it cannot happen that a small €100 extra it decide that here up is best for you, but now suddenly here down is best for you. That change cannot be understood. Additivity says it should not happen, it is irrational. So, and I think this is also quite, I did my best in the first meeting to convince you, I still think so. So those of you who have different choices in the middle and right situation, I also have tough question for them. Now, so we have seen the middle situation, well, it can't be identical to both the left and the right situation, but I give arguments why it should be identical to the left situation. I give arguments why it should be identical to the right situation. So one of them has to go. Now you can think for a while, which of these two conditions do you think is worse? Which is the wrong one, the culprit of the misunderstanding, whatever it is? Which of those two should be given up? You can think for a while, pause the video, and when you made up your mind, you come back. Okay, I assume you thought about it as long as you want. Now, I think this condition, monetary, there is absolutely no debate about it. In every respect, this situation, especially normative irrational, in every respect, here going down brings you in the same situation. Here going down, here going up brings you in the same situation as here going up. These are just identical choice situations. So there's no way I think there's no way that this condition could be given up. That can really not be the culprit. That cannot be blamed for anything. We must maintain that condition, I think, in any rational situation. But so then maybe you think also then additivity has to be given up. Well, maybe if these money amounts are not moderate for you, then maybe there's reason to give it up. But we are assuming that they are moderate, and I think that additive should also not be given up. That is also not the culprit, also should not be blamed. So then it seems like a strange situation, Left and right are different. How can middle be the same to both? But I think what was wrong was already in the beginning. The very choices in the left and the right situation are already irrational. You should not have two of these preferences like that. I believe that both these blue condition, monetary calculus and additivity, are reasonable, rational people should satisfy them. And therefore, I believe the middle situation is the same, should be the same as left and right. And therefore, I believe left and right should give the same choice. Either you prefer in both situations up, or you prefer in both situations down, or maybe you're indifferent, but you should not have different preferences. It is, in fact, in the first meeting, I tried to convince you that expected value maximization is a rational thing, and that here I think in all the three situations you should be quite indifferent. They are equally good. That's what is really going on. What is the real cause of the irrationality? Because there is an irrationality going on in these majority preferences. It is that people are too risk averse in gains, but also they are too risk seeking, often in losses. Maybe here they are too much looking at the zero outcome. They're ignoring how bad the -100 is. They just want to get away from losing anything, and zero attracts them too much. They should realize how bad -100 is. Here, maybe also they're looking too much at the zero. They're too afraid of the zero here. So again, but they should not do that. So at any rate, I think, rationally speaking, all the three choices should be the same. But surely that isn't what is not found empirically. Now, I want to discuss this situation more, but now from the descriptive empirical perspective, because the common preferences are what I indicated left and right. And in fact, in the middle situation that we indicated, most people in the middle situation prefer to go up. They say they behave like the right situation, not like the left situation. So empirically, more people here are giving up this monetary calculus, which is very fundamental, rather than additivity. That's the empirical finding. But now, for empirical work, we have to understand why this is happening. And this brings in the second one deviation of prospect theory from the classical model was probability weighting and rank dependence. We already saw it. But now I turn to a second deviation from the classical approach. That is, prospect theory says people usually in choice situation, they choose a sort of a reference point where they compare everything to it. And mostly they take their status quo. Not always, but mostly they do. Then they perceive of outcomes how they are changes with respect to the status quo, and improvement they consider to be gains, and worsenings they consider to be losses. And further, they behave quite differently toward gains and towards losses. All these things are empirically going on, have been found and documented extensively. And in fact, this example is also that's what's going on there. So let us look into more detail what is happening in this example. First of all, in the left and the right choice situation, just reference point is where you maybe when you entered the classroom or laboratory, wherever you heard about this choice situation. Maybe you're sitting at home now, but wherever, however you were there, that is you for most people the reference point. In the middle situation, it's a bit different. Here, this €100 extra. Usually, people do not incorporate them into the outcomes that are changes with respect to the reference point, but they incorporate this €100 into the reference point. So just here they take a reference point that's €100 more than in the left or the right situation, and then they still perceive of these things as losses. And so they perceive of these outcomes as losses just as much in the right situation. The fact that the reference point has changed a bit doesn't do matter much to them. So they treat the middle situation as the right situation. They both do this risk seeking that you often find for losses. They treat the middle situation quite differently than the left situation. And although I think by any rational standard, by final outcomes in those terms, left and middle choice situation are the same, people are perceiving the middle situation quite differently because it's a decomposition into reference point and a change with respect to a reference point. They do it differently in the middle situation than in the left situation. In the middle situation, therefore, they are thinking they are facing losses. In the left situation, they think they are facing gains. And then they behave quite differently toward gains than toward losses. And all of that, it's a long story, but all of that brings about the irrationality that we are dealing with here. And I think the real culprit, the real is, I already said it, but it's people are too risk averse for gains and too risk seeking for losses. That's what's really going on. They are too afraid here to take risk and they're too afraid here to take a sure loss. That's what's really going on. But then in combination with all the other things, it shows that people behave differently in left and middle, and that really cannot be. Not any rational explanation can be given for that. So that brings to the light that very more clear than anything else almost that something irrational is going on. Now, this reference dependence, well, already Markowitz 52 proposed the idea. So Kahneman Tversky, the probability weighting is from Quiggin, and reference dependence, the other component is from Markowitz. Not one ingredient in prospect theory by itself was new. The novelty was in the combination of everything, making machinery that really could work, where everything was in the right place. That was the novelty of prospect theory. But anyway, from the beginning, already Markowitz and everybody has always agreed, okay, this reference dependent is quite difficult. We don't have much theory about how people choose the reference point. It's a volatile phenomenon happening, and every this situation we more or less ad hoc model it. We don't have much theory about it yet. That's even still the situation today. It's hard to model, but still the phenomenon is so strong, we just have to incorporate it as good as we can. And I often said it, we know that our models are not so good in this field, but it's the best we can. We must, it's so important to have the right model. We have to do it. That holds maybe more for reference dependence than for anything else. This is so much going on in human beings. We have to incorporate it into our models to understand what goes on in human decision making. And that's what we will do. And that's what will be incorporated in prospect theory to come. But that will be in next recordings.